Let's go ahead and start. And so this was from our monthly challenge last month. I'm moving some stuff around here. And by the way, Doris is not on the call tonight. She's not feeling well. And I told her, I said, don't come on, but she's not feeling well at all. Um, so you got me. And so I'll do my best here. So last month's challenge was basically to make a list of all the incredible things that you've done in your life and keep this list handy to remind yourself of all the capabilities that you have and of the situations that you've overcome in your life. And so that if you missed last month's call, then this was our challenge. And so if you didn't, if you took the challenge, well, we hope you were able to do this. And then last month's breakout group had to do with connection. And so you can see here that we were talking about who are the people that you feel safe with in your life. What are the things that you do or can do to create more of a sense of safety? What brings a sense of safety and connection or solitude? And we talked about all the research that shows when do you feel your best, calm, connected, and safe. What's really interesting, I was just looking at research, and some of you are probably very well aware of this, but one of the biggest things and biggest negatives in people's life right now, and that's causing so many problems, is this sense of loneliness. And loneliness is it's just unbelievable that when most people are asked, what is the most difficult time for you that has been due to what over the last year, their answers are loneliness. And so it's really amazing. We teach this all the time, and that we are wired for connection. We're wired for survival, but we're equally as wired for connection. So that being connected gives us that sense of safety. It gives us it meets so many of our human needs. Just feeling like we have our group, and we have people that care about us and love us in our life, and that we feel very safe around. And so that's what we talked about last week. And this week, I'm going to talk about the power of intuition. And so something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And it's really fascinating. It's a fascinating area if you haven't studied it or looked at what's going on with it. And there's a lot of research right now that's really showing that intuition is a key element in our ability to be successful in many areas of our life. And some of these areas that are that there's being research done in is business decisions, entrepreneurship, learning, medical knowledge, spiritual growth, healing, overall well-being, social connection, social cognition, and creativity. And this is research out of the HeartMath Institute. And the HeartMath Institute did some studies with entrepreneurs that had repeated success in their businesses, and went to other businesses and started other businesses and so on. And many of them said that intuition was the key element in their success, which is pretty fascinating, isn't it? And that would be the main thing that would be the key factor in their ability to do well in business. And so if you look at all of these different areas that I mentioned, our overall health, our overall well-being is connected to our intuitive knowledge. And And it's so critical for our decision making. So I'm just going to quickly uh, touch on basically four areas of intuition. And then I'll ask you guys to think about some questions related to it. And what we might do if we don't have a bigger group is we just might stay together here tonight and just stay in, we'll be the one group. And we can talk about different parts of intuition and some of your experiences with intuition as well. So like I said, there's this growing body of research that's out there right now showing that there are underlying unconscious aspects of intuition, right? And that intuition is involved in intuitive perception, implicit learning, unconscious learning, which I'll talk about here in a minute, and unconscious or implicit knowledge, right? Which is fascinating. And so we've talked about the fact that especially in our HeartMath trainings, we've talked about the fact that how our autonomic nervous system and the way that our limbic system works causes us really to address problems in our life in sort of this habitual automatic way, right? That we do, that so much of our life has to do with habit. And if you think about that, it does, right? And I talk about this all the time of like, try to go on a diet, try to stop, tell yourself, oh, I'm going to exercise more, or I'm going to name anything that you want to change in your life. And basically your body will habitually go back to those habits and basically say, oh, no, you're not going to do that. I'm in charge. And what I mean by that is that your body basically the physiology of your body will basically run the show. The other thing that we find too is that don't we just kind of do the same things over and over in the same way every day? And every time we do that, we strengthen the neural networks in our brain and in our amygdala functioning to where we just do things. We do so many things, most things without thinking about those things. So when we talk about intuition and the types of intuition, one is implicit knowledge. Implicit knowledge, and think about this one. This refers to knowledge that you've acquired in the past and either forgot or did not realize you learned it. You've either acquired this knowledge in the past and you either don't realize that you learned it, or you may have forgotten it. And what implicit knowledge has to do with is that it involves the brain matching patterns of problems or challenges that you've dealt with, but you may have even forgot that you dealt with those, and base them on our prior experiences. So what I'm talking about here is that we intuitively know what to do in a situation based on prior memories of how we dealt with another situation in our life, but we don't really think about that. Okay, so we do things and they're like, sometimes we know the answer to something and we know exactly how to deal with that particular problem. And the reason that why we know how to deal with that is because of past memories of that, which we have likely forgotten about, but we've dealt with it, and we use that knowledge to deal with our present situation. And an example of this that the HeartMath Institute gives is that, have you gone to that car mechanic who basically can listen to the way the car's running and have a sense of what to do with the car, right? And you may have had this with your own car. Or what are some ideas what are some examples of implicit knowledge that you've had where you just kind of know maybe it's a human relationship, how you just kind of know how to deal with that situation without really thinking about it, without really going through this process of decision making. You this knowingness of like, if I handle this situation this way, it will work out well. Any examples of that?
I think an example happens in the classroom often, Rick, especially with experienced teachers where, a kid will come in and you'll pick up cues. They don't necessarily even have to tell you that much, but experience with past students tell you what kind of state that this kid is in, or maybe what are some of the issues that they're dealing with. And without even getting a lot of information verbally, you pick up a good sense of what's going on with that student.
No, I think that's a great example, Paul. I mean, I think of kids, I think of the kids those kids that, that I've worked with that had trauma. And I like, sometimes I don't know anything about I know nothing about their developmental history, nothing that's gone on, but I have this intuitive sense that they're a kid that's been through a lot of trauma. And so, like you said, then I know how I address them in a different way. And I really don't like, I just do it without really thinking about that. I remember when I was a therapist, and Diane's on the call here, who's a fantastic life coach, you guys. If you don't know that, she's like the best in the world as far as I'm concerned. But when I was a consultant, I mean, when I was a therapist is what I was going to say. This made me think of all of the people that I worked with. And when somebody came into my office, I didn't necessarily know. I mean, I might have some information about them, and I might ask them information about them, but it's as if I had this intuitive sense of how to work with this particular individual, because I'd worked with many other individuals that in some way were like them. So I really like what you said, Paula. How does that fit with life coaching, Diane?
Oh, definitely. We tune into people. We know more than we think we know, okay? Because our thought processes, our cognitive processes are only a part of what we know. And we have this great reservoir of intuition. So I tune into my clients. And it's like we're on the same wavelength. And there's a sense of knowing, where they're navigating, what they're going through. Which is beautiful. It's like being in a flow state for a coach. There's also research in the Netherlands by a psychologist named Abt Dijksterhuis, who did all this empirical research on the fact that we make better decisions when there's a complex issue involved, when we rely upon our intuition instead of just our cognitive, rational faculties. I mean, that's, we're drawing upon what Paul said and what you said, Rick, a whole background of information that is filed away implicitly in one part of our brain. And our intuition has access to that. And it's powerful and it's wonderful. And it's been empirically proven in a lot of research.
It has. And I think a lot of people, when they think of intuition, they almost think, well, isn't it kind of out there a little bit? Because we don't talk about it that much. And yeah, there's lots of research out there that shows that, it's vital to our decision making. So,
right.
Yeah, thank you.
But in working with small children, they usually cannot tell us what's wrong. I teach kindergarten, and kids will be falling apart. They have no idea why. And just being able to intuitively understand what their life is most likely like at home, and where their developmental levels are most likely kind of developed. It's the difference between my first year teaching and how I was able to handle children and how I handle children now, that I just had those experiences to just kind of shape how I read people, or read not just the students, but also the parents, because parents are never honest. They always try to put themselves in a better light, which I get. You don't want people to think bad about you or your family. or you don't want your kids' teachers judging you. And I get that. But being able just to be like, well, they're saying this, but probably the truth is closer to this based on what I'm seeing in the child. And nobody's giving me answers. It's 100% like seeing the patterns and understanding that I'm never going to have an answer unless I think outside the box and really just read the situation.
Absolutely. And then your intuition informs you of that. You know, it gives you that sense of, well, if I do this, this will work. And so, no, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Another type of intuition, and this is out of the HeartMath Institute. And I know Diane will know quite a bit about this, and Doris and I have trained on this, but refers to the ability of the nervous system to detect and respond to basically other people's emotional state, right? And we know that because of the energy that is created in our body, because electricity is created in our body by our nervous system, and so on, and because of that, then we have this ability. Then what is created by that is anytime there's electricity, an electromagnetic field is created, and in that electromagnetic field is created around us, and that field carries information with it, and it basically carries information about what our emotional state is. Now, we don't know how far that field actually extends, but we know that it does extend several feet away from the body, and we know then that that people can. I think we've talked about this in this group, that people can oftentimes sense what our mood is, can feel our emotional state to a certain degree. And so with regard, to what we're talking about tonight, there was some research by HeartMath that talked about that some people have the ability to sense even when an earthquake is about to occur before it happens. So, yeah, amazing, right? And then another one that we all know probably, and we may have all experienced, is that many people have the ability to sense when someone's staring at them. I don't know if you've ever had this occur to you, but I was thinking about it was probably a year or so ago. I was sitting at a stoplight, and there was this person in the next car was just staring me down, right? And I was not focused on anything but driving, and but you can sense that, right? So we have this ability then, this intuitive ability to sense, things that are going on in our environment, that, people and things that are near us, their emotional states, and maybe some of these other things as well. So, does anybody have an example of we're calling it energetic sensitivity. This is the HeartMath term for this, but or you could call it energetic communication, but it's a type of intuition, basically.
I feel like I have that with kids. Like, they always give me kids with behavior plans, and they never explode with me. And I feel like it's because I sense the explosion coming and divert it before it can happen. And I never thought of it as something like intuition or like the emotional give and take. But I've had several kids that they never blow up, and people are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I don't know." But I guess I hearing that makes me feel like maybe they're putting off an energy that I can pick up on.
Absolutely, Geneva. Doris and I have trained on this now, and have are actually putting this into behavior plans, that if you can, that you as a teacher, you as an educator, have the ability to, your regulation, your state of regulation is literally affects the kids that are around you. And I also love what you said, because my daughter has the same ability. My daughter Maritza, who she works really well with these really small children with behavioral issues. And a lot of them aren't even, very communicative. They don't have their language and communication skills yet. And yet she has this sense of like how to stay calm and what to do in those particular situations. She has this amazing ability to help keep kids calm like you do. So yeah, they're feeling your emotional state. And if your emotional state, when you're regulated, and also you add on implicit knowledge to that, like I somehow know what they need right now. I mean, that's awesome. And the research supports that would be why you would be helping those kids, right?
I wonder, Rick, if this can also extend to interspecies interactions when you have these people
Yeah.
who are really incredible with certain types of animals, and we call them horse whisperers or dog whisperers, but they have this really they have this implicit knowledge, I think, as well as conscious knowledge, but they also are kind of communicating to that animal whatever, a sense of safety or whatever, so that they can alter behavior and work with that animal.
Absolutely. Diane, I mean, the HeartMath studies show this, that, and I was reading, and I think it was another HeartMath study or article, but we all know that animals like dogs could really have this sensitivity to whether you're afraid of them or not, right? And especially certain species of dogs have, like, they know, like if you're a Doberman knows, or, a pit bull knows, a German Shepherd knows. I mean, these dogs know, and they know if they're feeling that state. And then of course, if you have the ability then to really know how to handle yourself in those situations, and you can help regulate them as well. You can put them in more coherence. So there's been studies, I know with HeartMath, there's been studies with dogs and with horses, right?
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, okay, the HeartMath Institute didn't exist during the time of St. Francis of Assisi, but apparently St. Francis, animals would come up to him, wild animals would approach him. Birds would land on his arms when he would be, speaking to them. He must have had such beautiful, coherent energy that they all just felt, a sense of kinship with him.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. That's incredible to know. And it makes total sense, right? There's always, you made me think of those people that, I aspire to be this person, but I'm not even close. But that person that is, when they're in your presence, you feel like you're the person that is like the most important person in the world, right? And that's what I aspire to be. I've got a long, long way to go. But these people are just like, they are so calm, and they're just the energy that they have around them and in them is just so calming. And and you feel good, and you feel important, and you feel connected. And so I think it's about this energetic sensitivity, right? A lot of it is. The last one here it's the last one, and one other thing is called is non-local intuition. And this refers to knowledge or a sense of something that cannot be explained by past or forgotten knowledge, or by sensing the environment. So now we're talking about a type of intuition that is not limited by time and space. So let me give you a couple of examples of that. And some people go, oh, come on now, you're getting a little too, off the path here for me. But let's think of examples of this. A parent senses something that's happening to their child who is many miles away. and and you just sense that. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that before, but repeated successful sensing experienced by entrepreneurs about factors related to making business decisions. But what I'm really talking about here is that thinking about those instances where you were, thinking about someone like Paul and I was thinking about Paul, and then Paul sends me an email, and and I all of a sudden it's like, wow, I was just thinking about it. I want to give you an example. I have a friend that I knew in middle school, and I had been looking for him for many, many years. And this just happened recently, and I started, all of a sudden, I started thinking about him. Just thinking about him out of the blue, right? And then I get an email from him.
Credit card reader.
And he says, no, I got a call from him. He called and he actually got Doris. And he said, I'm looking for Rick Bowman.
Credit card number down. Okay. And you need the 3-digit.
And
Whatever. Phone number and email.
I put that on there already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
sounds like somebody is,
That's how you get your.
I don't know, something's on. Okay. So, so what ended up happening was he calls Doris, and he's been looking for me for like 20 years. And somehow couldn't find me. And, but the point I want to make too is like, I just started thinking about him, and then all of a sudden I get his call. So that has nothing to do with, right, with energetic sensitivity, it has nothing to do with implicit knowledge. I mean, how did we connect? Any examples that you might have related to what we're talking about?
Okay, I have an example. I was years ago trying to go to college, and my family was not very supportive. And so I was working in the summertime for Kelly Services Temp. And I remember after doing this job, I was driving by the Riverside Press Enterprise newspaper office. And I had this strong sense that I should go there and apply for a job. So I did a U-turn, went into their parking lot, walked in the door. I was all of 19 years old and said, "Hi, I'm Diane Dreher. I'm a writer. I'd like to apply for a job." And I don't know what gave me the courage, but I went up to their personnel department and they said, "Oh, our college intern has just given us notice this morning. We haven't even posted the job yet. Could you come to work on Monday?" And I said, "Absolutely." And that job helped me work my way through college. It gave me confidence. It made me feel like a writer. It was fantastic. How did I know that? It was not implicit. There's no way that I had known about this, but somehow I must have gotten on some wavelength that the entrepreneurs are aware of. And it opened up a whole new path for me. So there are times when we have hunches.
Yes.
And why not follow them? We may be tuning into something.
Yeah, and I love your story, Diane, because I think, and your comment about hunches, I think that we've there's this, how do I say this? There's, people are always saying things like, you just need, like, you work this out analytically. In other words, we want you, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, you're in that cortex, right? You're not using your entire brain. You're not and so we have a lot of value in, okay, develop a plan, come up with a strategy, and so on and so forth. When sometimes our heart and our brain is telling us we need to just go for that, right? And you kind of know too, there's a knowingness there. I think that it's gonna be all right. And sometimes it's, in your case, it was life-changing. But we have access to this. And that's the important thing. So I want to give you this, listen to this. I'll give you a study, and I'm going to just talk about this. It's really fascinating. So HeartMath did this study, and I'm not going to go into the depth of it, but they they brought a bunch of people together. This is on non-local intuition. They brought a bunch of people together, and they thought they were in a study where they were, it had to do with handling stress or something like that. So it was a blind study. They didn't know what they were really doing. And what they would do is they would sit them down at this screen, and they were going to have two, they were going to sit there for a short period of time, and then they were either going to see an image that was known to be a calming image for people, or an image that had a strong negative emotional response for most people, right? And so they sat them down for 6 seconds in front of a blank screen. They told them obviously that an image was going to come up. So they would sit 6 seconds, an image would come up, and it was randomly picked by the computer, negative image or calming image. And then what they had them do was they had them connected to EEGs. So they were measuring their brain waves. ECGs, they were measuring their heart's electrical activity, heart rhythm variability, HRV, and skin conductance. So they had them all wired up, right? And what they found in this particular study, and so there was something like 45 pictures that they went through. What they found is that that overall the participants could predict with high reliability the picture that was going to come up, because what they saw is if a calming picture came up, that this is mind-boggling, right? I think it was 4.8 seconds prior to the computer generating the image, their heart, all of these different, their brain waves, their heart's electrical activity, and their HRV reacted to what was coming up before it even came up. So they could see this positive, more coherent, right, wave, or measures from these 3 indicators. Skin conductance was the only one, I think, that didn't really match up. So just think about this. So what they found was that the heart too was getting the information first and sending it to the brain. It was a very complex study, but the heart was actually affected the first to know what was coming up. And of course, if it was a negative image, the heart responded in a negative way through these different measures that we're talking about here. So it's fascinating. It's a fascinating study. It's under HeartMath Institute's research, if you're interested, or if you'd like for me to get you the study to you. That's pretty fascinating, right? That they knew they knew what image, the heart and the brain knew what image was going to come up before it even came up. So there's still a lot of debate about non-local intuition. There's not a lot of research, so there's still a lot of debate about this. But you can bet that the HeartMath Institute is really working on this and doing a lot of good research. Again, how many of us have had those experiences where we just knew, or we just had this feeling that something in our life was going to happen, or we were going to, we knew that maybe something, a child, a loved one, or something was going on with them that was difficult, and we decided to make a call or whatever, and we find out that there was something happening. And I guess the message here is don't write that off as just luck. That we do have we have this ability to think really and outside of time and space. So anyway, any other comments or stories about non-local intuition?
I wonder if there's a correlation between people who can do that a little bit easier like have those feelings, and people with maybe past trauma or anxiety issues that aren't as capable because everything registers like this high in negative emotion. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of what my thinking is like, I wonder if some people, because they're already regulated, they're more tuned into those kind of things, and then people who maybe have a problem with being regulated might not be as sensitive because they're always on high alert.
No, I love what you're saying. I don't know the research on that, but I will say this. So what the Heart Math is saying is that when you put yourself into a higher state of heart brain coherence, your intuitive abilities improve. And the more you do that, so I think you're probably right, is that if I'm in a state of anxiety or fear or depression or whatever it is, some depleting emotion, then trauma that's affecting me, then I'm probably not going to have these abilities, like, because my brain is not going to be in a state of coherence. So I think you're spot on, Geneva, about that. And the Heart Math Institute is saying, so if you want to really improve your intuition, then continue to practice heart math tools and techniques. And the more the brain's in coherence, the more intuitive you are, the more access you have to your intuitive intelligence, is what I should say. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. One last thing here is really that is about insight. So this is, again, having to do with intuition. But think about this one. When we have a problem that we can't immediately solve, the brain can be working on it subconsciously. Would you agree? So just because you can't solve the problem at that time doesn't mean the brain is still working on a subconscious level. And so my question for you is that, have you ever been driving down the road or taking a shower or doing something, and not thinking about the problem, and the solution just pops into your mind? You just have an intuitive insight. So Diane, do you want to, can you tell us, give us an example?
Oh, gosh. There's a 4-part process of creativity, which is a period of active work and then incubation. So, incubation, inspiration, and verification. So it's preparation, incubation, inspiration, and verification. And what happens with me is that I can work on something and come to an impasse and just not be able to see what to do. And I can worry and stress and try to push through it and get totally incoherent. And I guess what? I can't do anything. Or else I can just leave, go out and garden, go to sleep and wake up the next morning with the answer, because my brain has kept working on it. So there's a, I guess it's like the serenity prayer. It's, we need to know the difference between things we can control and change and things we can't, and then just sort of release it. And what happens is our wonderful brains keep working on them. Yes. Albert Einstein used to get his inspirations when he was out sailing. So he kept a little notebook in his pocket because, then he'd go back to his lab and work on whatever it was. We need to take breaks and let our brains, do the work instead of just worry on the top of our heads.
No, I love that. I mean, don't we really just, like, when we have a problem like that, like you said, I mean, like you say, we're worrying, we're thinking about it all the time. We're not in any real coherent, that doesn't make us more coherent for sure, right?
No, it's just the opposite.
It's the opposite. And so we get more anxious about it. And then when we're in this state where maybe you're gardening, or you're taking a walk, or or you're on a boat or whatever, or you're walking the beach or whatever, then and you're in that state of coherence, then the answer comes, just like it feels like out of nowhere. Yeah, I love that. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
There's a whole litany of stories about scientists and inventors who had problems that they couldn't solve. And then, you know, they had a dream about something that suggested an answer to him. The one that pops into mind is the guy who invented the sewing machine with the needle, with the thread hole at the tip of the needle, and had been working on this problem for a long time, and then had this dream of being chased by people with spears, and there were holes in the tip of the spear. And then he incorporated that into the needle, and it worked. But I think before we Googled everything that we couldn't remember, this used to happen a lot more, where you'd try to remember a name or an actor or the name of a book or something, and it would pop into your mind later when you weren't, quote, thinking about it, and your subconscious was working on it.
No, I love that. These days, sometimes you describe me, I'll go, gosh, I cannot remember the name of that individual or the name of that book or whatever. And then I'm trying to force it to remember it, and I can't. And then, an hour later, it just pops into my mind. Like you said, I love the story about the dreams as well. It's like, that unconscious part of you working on it, and even in a dream, giving you answers to, giving you insights to the problems that we have.
I kind of feel like I have the reverse of that. I'm a world-class worrier, and I constantly am like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? But there's been times when people are like, something's been going on, and they're like, you must be so stressed out. And I'm like, I'm not. I just feel like it's gonna be okay. I'm not stressed out at all. They're like, that's not like you. I know it's not like me. But I just had this sense that it would work out and it would be okay, and I wasn't worried, and it did.
So what did did that just happen, or were there something that you were doing, or was there something that you said to yourself to say, I'm just not going to worry about that? Or was it just a feeling like I don't need to worry about it?
It was just a feeling, like it never, like even when like the situation was arising or it was at full peak craziness, whatever, I was just so calm about it. I just wasn't worried. And it made no sense because I always am. So usually that's when my husband kind of goes with it. He's like, okay, if she's not worried, we're going to embrace that.
Well, maybe there's something there. I mean, maybe, in terms of your intuition of like, I don't really need to worry. I mean, I'm also a world-class worrier as well. I've been like, I tell this in my trainings, it's like, my mom was a worrier. She worried out loud. My mom and dad worried about everything, and they worried out loud, right? So I began to, I mean, my mom would worry if she wasn't worried, right? And then I even caught myself doing that at times. So, so worry has been so I can tell myself sometimes to worry, like, you got to stop worrying. But what I've noticed that when I'm in a state of coherence, I don't worry. It's like somehow it's going to turn out all right. And sometimes it's in situations where people would, like you said, Janita, it's like people are like, you aren't worried about that? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And it is sort of odd. It doesn't feel odd to me though. It just feels like I'm not worried, right? There's something inside of me that's just going, I mean, my whole physiology is not like, it's going to work out, so that's what we got to practice, right? We got to practice that how do we create more of this heart-brain coherence and putting our autonomic nervous system in sync and doing that and creating more and more of that and practicing more and more of that so that we can change that baseline. And that's kind of the last thing I was going to talk about here, is that when we create more intuition versus worry or fear or whatever negative emotion we have, it's not helping us. I should say they're really not negative emotion, depleting emotions. I mean, when we would lean more on, like, I know I'll come up with the answer here. I have, like, if I just let it go and listen to that intuition that's in me, right? Then I can really I'm going to find the answer. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that comments? Okay, all right. Okay, let me look at this. I didn't move the slide tonight. So we talked about, so how can your intuitive heart intelligence help you then? Besides maybe less depleting emotions would be one. Before you came on, Diane, we were also talking about the fact that the research is showing that better overall decision making. And I know that HeartMath has studied entrepreneurs that have been successful. I'm sure you're aware of that one. And but here are other ones that I saw from their research: better learning, medical knowledge, spiritual growth, healing, overall well-being, social cognition, creativity. And some more here that I have listed are that you can gain more access to your intuition by practicing heart coherence, like we've been talking about. But the practical benefits of more access to your intuition are making better choices for higher outcomes, increasing your capacity for discerning in sensitive situations. We've talked a lot about that with working with children. Like you were talking about Geneva, working with kids and really knowing how to work with them in a way that's going to help them stay regulated and calm and be able to learn better. And then determining the attitude you should bring to a particular situation. How about that one? How many times are we in those situations where this one, where we that our intuitiveness gives us the answer of whether we should speak up right now or it's time for us to just not say anything. So that is one that I find a lot these days is like, okay, I know right now, something in me is telling me, my intuition is telling me I don't need to say anything right now. And a lot of times I don't listen to my intuition. I listen to that cortex that says, oh no, go ahead. It'll be okay. And then later I'm regretting it, right? I didn't need to say that, it wasn't really helpful. And you knew that you already knew that you didn't need to say that. So here's another one too, determining what attitude you should bring to a certain situation, detecting when life is telling you that you need to change an attitude about something or someone or some situation, and really accessing your intuition to be able to do that. And then HeartMath also then lists that helping guide your diet and health choices as well. So sometimes that voice says, no, you really don't need to eat that extra, whatever it is. And it happens to me all the time. And sometimes I listen and sometimes I don't. And so I think intuition has really been undersold, hasn't it?
Not just undersold. I know people who talk badly about it, like people who are make intuitive decisions are too emotional, or they're my father-in-law is very negative on that topic. And yes, I've heard more negative about it than positive.
I think I have too, actually, to be honest with you. I mean, even when yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much, I think people sort of see it as, I don't know. I think there's just so much value, we think, on being able to be logical and analytical and rational. Right? Go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to say that I think it's also been tied often to a gender difference. you know, talking about women's intuition and men are more logical
Wow.
and rational, which of course is completely groundless. But, you know, Geneva, when I hear you say that about, you know, your father-in-law, I think that that's the type of thing that, well, if you can't justify your thought process for how you get to something, it's not valid, you know, where obviously, you know, it's very valid when you're reacting to something based on a lifetime of experience and, you know, you're giving a response. But I think it's often been used to shut people down that other people didn't want to, you know, well, you can't justify that to me, so therefore I'm not going to give it any value.
Yeah, I've heard people say, well, first of all, you know, you're not really thinking things through,
Mm,
you know, and they think that you're not being rational. And, you know, we do have this nice prefrontal cortex, you know, part of our brains that can do mathematics, you know, at least basic math. But we've got, my husband's a neuroscientist, we've got all the rest of our brains, the, you know, that implicit knowledge gets stored in, right? And if we don't use that, we're only using like a very small part of our brains. And people who doubt the efficacy of intuition don't understand that, you know, that there's knowledge that is lodged in something called the striatum, which is not the prefrontal cortex. It's like, you know, having something on our hard drive that is not right up on our screen. We're only going to access the knowledge on our screen and not everything that's on the hard drive or even the internet. You know, no, they don't perhaps understand the way the brain works.
Yeah, I think you're right, Diane. I also, Rick, when you were talking before about, you know, people being aware of, you know, reading another person or a situation like that, you know, when you train in terms of listening skills and really, you know, kind of shutting down your own cognitive process to be open to the other person. And you can often see that like in meetings and stuff where, you know, somebody's just inside their own head and they're kind of rolling forward with their ideas and not really open to anybody else. And other people are kind of like, okay, I'm really going to listen to this person and now be open to it. And you can almost feel that difference in terms of what's happening in your own head, in terms of what state you're in.
absolutely. I mean, you're just making me think about a whole lot of things right now. But I mean, the idea that do we leave and listen with intent, right? Are we really, I mean, like, do we really listen with this intent to really understand the other individual? Like, and that means shutting down all of this other clatter that's going on in our brains, right? And you know, what have we listened with our heart? What have we listened with? What have we listened with our, you know, we're focused. We're listening with tenacity. We're listening, you know, we're listening to really understand. And a lot, and then you made me, when you were talking, Paul, what that made me think of is like, I'm not just listening with my cortex here. I'm listening with my full brain, like Diane was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always, like if we ought to try this sometime, and it's just and I think we did this, Diane, in the training, in the heart math training, but listening to somebody tell a story, and then you repeat back to them basically what they, you know, what they told you, to summarize it, but you also say, what did you also hear that I didn't really say, that really I was trying to say, but I didn't really say it in words, but what did you really hear at a deeper level? Do you remember that, Diane? Yeah. And I mean, do we listen like that to people? And talk about business. Well, in business, if you did that, your business you would have to make so many more better decisions, wouldn't you? I mean, and just in our relationships, just like Geneva, you know, working with children, if we would really listen to them at this deeper level than just, well, this is hard for me. And, okay, so really tell me why it's so hard. And why can't you meet this expectation that I have? And then when they tell you, you're listening at a deeper level than just the words that they're telling you. You're like you were talking about, you're feeling that intuition is going, they are in so much pain right now. They're suffering right now. I know there must be, I can sense that there's a lot going on in their family right now that they can't tell me about, but I know it intuitively. And because of that, I can provide, I can be what they need for me to be at this time. So that's the power of intuition, right? We have that ability. We just, go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, I think the far opposite from being open and being intuitive is when you're in an argument.
Yes.
No, and you're not listening at all. You're just preparing your next point. And that's kind of the ultimate situation where, you're not listening, you're not being intuitive, and you're just kind of, in your own head, ready to make your next point.
That's why I think arguing and debating is absolutely the worst possible thing you can do to solve a problem. That, like, even in our country, these presidential debates, they might as well just give them 20 minutes just to state all their opinions instead of going back and forth, because nothing is getting solved. There's no listening. There's nothing helpful about it, really.
Well, you made me think of debate teams in high school and things like that. I don't know if we still have them or not, but like Paul said, I mean, if you're in a debate, basically what you're doing is I'm not really that interested in what you're, well, maybe I'm interested in what you're saying, but but I am really in sort of I'm defending myself. I am going to defend myself. So really, how can you fully listen with an intent to understand, right? And I just think that in most of our lives, we don't do that oftentimes because we're not in an emotional state, like you said, to be doing that. If we're in a state of any sort of state where we are in an incoherent, dysregulated state, like you said, Paul, I mean, there's no way you're not gonna, you oftentimes you become more inflexible, more unlikely to change, more unlikely to be able to have empathy for that other person's perspective, and so on. And so, yeah, go ahead. Geneva, did you want to say something? I saw your towel come on. Or Diane?
Yeah, that's why what Rick said earlier, that being in a coherent state helps us think more creatively. Because if I'm just trying to debate or argue with somebody, I'm reducing all the options to either or, all or nothing, my way or your way. Only two possibilities. And we live in a world of infinite possibility if we're open to sensing those possibilities and co-creating together.
Absolutely. No, well said. Well said. All right, guys. Well, this was why if we would have we didn't do a breakout tonight, but just our final things here is that where the monthly challenge is just find a moment each day, maybe 5 minutes, to just be fully present. I mean, and the other thing is to practice heart-brain coherence. And I have to move things around here, but I see stuff in my chat here. Okay. And just to take note of whether these times have an impact on your intuition and how they do, because think about it. I mean, the only time that I really have access to my intuition is when I'm in the present moment. This is not, if, going back to my worry and Geneva, what you said, it's like and we all worry. I mean, people worry. We all do, right? So it's not just us, but the thing about it is that the goal is to stay present, isn't it? The goal is that the more that you can stay in the present moment, of time, you're not living out of the familiar past, and you're not going into the unpredictable future. So being in that present moment allows us to have more access to our intuition, and we can do that, of course, by just by meditating or by using these simple heart-brain coherence techniques that we have that we can do that can help us get there. So that's your monthly challenge, is just to continue to work on that heart-brain coherence, and knowing that the research shows that that will help you get more access to your intuition. All righty, guys.